So thank you for giving us some of your time. We're trying to get, just so we get finished with one
What
thing, we
crazy?
have to move on to another thing. Trying to understand things. So this is sort of like 101 on the governor's proposals for the ARPA money. And,
Okay.
I have the memo from Kendall. That's about all I have. There's a chart and a narrative. But maybe you could just take it away and tell us what you're thinking. I know it's a work in progress, so I'll have draft over everything. But
All right. So why don't I have something, let's say, that we could kind of use. Um,
okay, sorry.
all right. You know what? I'll start with the. All right. Let me start all over. Good morning,
Good morning.
Chairman Sarakin and the rest of the committee. Joan Goldstein, Commissioner of Economic Development. Um, the the first thing I'll start with is, of course, the economic development initiatives in total are 143 million, I believe, on that budget. You're probably looking at that kind of sort of a spreadsheet
Yes.
Yeah.
on the governor's announcement, right? And so, even though I'll talk about the economic development, even though there's economic development throughout so much, right? You just discussed housing, obviously that has impact, and then there's a water, wastewater, and broadband. Obviously, it all intertwines. But I'll focus mine on economic development, and we kind of broke it down into two kind of buckets, right? One is acute need, and it's really a continuation of what we've just been discussing regarding H315, and that is the economic recovery grants, right? So it's an acknowledgement that we still have need out there, and the fact that we could start generating kind of the demand curve of that, to be extremely precise about who hasn't received help or who has received help but still has a loss. Like, all of that work has to get done. And so as a result, we've put aside $50 million for that.
That's for the acute need bucket.
Exactly. And so our expectation is that we would spend that down in the first year, right? Like from now until whenever we agreed that this is the right amount. We think that that's going to be used up from now until, we'll probably work on this. It'll probably last us through the summer, right? That's just a ballpark, but just taking into consideration how long it's going to take for us to, set this up, do all the outreach, get all the applications, do all the processing. But because this is such an unprecedented amount of money, the idea behind the capital investment piece of this is that we all know of projects throughout the regions, throughout Vermont, that need to get done, that have significant funding gaps. And that's why we've committed 90 million to those, because we thought this is an opportunity to make some lasting impact. And so what are we talking about? Like, what types of things are we talking about? Well, right off the bat, we know of outdoor recreation, right? There is an unbelievable effort, right, to make us more accommodating to all the people who either live here and want to outdoor recreate, but also those who come here from elsewhere, right? If you went to a trailhead and you saw that you couldn't get parking, or, there just aren't the amenities that you would come to expect when you want to utilize the great outdoor assets. We have rail trails and such, which are great, but you never really know what's in the town that you're just passing by. So there's an effort to take a portion of this, probably about a third, I think is the way we've identified it, to A&R to do that sort of work, right? And it's not just A&R, it's a combination of agencies, A&R and Agency of Transportation and ACCD in terms of promotional. So a chunk of that is outdoor rec. The rest of it really is this concept of a capital improvement plan. And a capital improvement plan has benefits, ongoing benefits. Even, even though we're very happy that ARPA is, longer term than CRF, it's still only 3.5 years, right? And we all know that these capital projects take a long time, usually to come to fruition. But the good news is that you reap benefits from those improvements for years to come. And so the impetus here is on the longer term. So let's take care of some of the acute need, but then let's also invest for the future. And each of the regional development corporations have provided us with information about what are the projects in their area, in their respective areas that have a gap, of funding. And they're usually complex projects. They're usually involving many stakeholders and many funding sources. And I think we'd want to continue in that vein, that the state by no means would take this fund and be the only funder in it. I think we want these things to be things that will come to fruition so that we could obligate funds within the period of time that we have. So like some examples are, I know Rutland's trying to do this food hub. It requires a build out of buildings, anything that requires sort of capital investment. Think of buildings, think of equipment investments, those types of things.
Park Street School. Park Street School.
Exactly. So we all know of these projects. They're usually very large, although everything is relative, right? So for the respective region, they may put forth a project that isn't as large, but is very, very meaningful for that particular town or village. So we have started a process. We do this for the Northern Border Regional Commission grant program, and we want to, it needs to get updated, but that's the idea. There's a Yellow Barn food accelerator that's been worked on in Hardwick. Those are the ideas of the types of regional projects. And so that's where the bulk of it is going. Now, there's another data point or line item about accelerated permitting or exemption. And that has to do with, if it's an ARPA project and there was something similar to this in the ARA days, which was the stimulus from 2008. I guess, it was 2008. And so it's a very similar thing. Like if you're within a village center, within a designated area, it'd be exempt from Act 250. And then the others are more like an expedited timeline. So that is the thought process. I know it's very broad, but gives you an idea of our thinking. It's like sort of acute and then longer term investment.
So a couple of questions. Thank you. It's a good overview. So you're thinking in a general sense, the 90 million would go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. You didn't really talk about community reinvestment, did you?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that one. That one I think is a $3 million ask, and the reason for that is last year the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston had a program called Working Communities Challenge, and these 4 communities that were mentioned were communities that had very good proposals but did not get picked, and it was very competitive. And so the idea would be for this 3 million, we would get the same services from the Federal Reserve Bank, which really amounts to capacity building and professional technical assistance for those communities that have plans on how they could reverse the demographic decline in those areas. So it's a little bit different. I mean, I know it's all lumped in under capital investment, but it's a little bit different. It's really in total 143, right? Like 90, 50, and the 3 million is the.
So you're saying that, just to put that one aside for a second, those 4 communities that would divide up that 3 million, that giving 3 million in ARPA money draws down some services or assistance from the Federal Reserve Bank?
Yeah, I believe that's the way it works. I'd have to look into more detail. I don't have all their proposals in front of me, but that is the way it works. It's a community, I forgot the name of the title, but it's like community investment segment of the Federal Reserve Bank that came up with the program and has helped. Like Springfield, I think, is a recipient last year, and others did not get it. So it's like, it's an acknowledgement that some of these towns don't have the capacity to do programming, and the Federal Reserve Bank will provide that support. So we wanted to, see this would be a good opportunity to.
So Springfield, that was awarded, they got the support and some money. And in this case, we're supplying the money and the Federal Reserve Bank will provide the technical assistance.
Yes, that's my understanding.
So the rest of the money of the 90 million is 2/3 to the regional priority projects and 1/3 to the outdoor recreation. And that's spread over, each of those is spread over 3 years.
That's correct. It's approximately 30 million a year. And I think with Agency of Natural Resources, it's a smaller amount in this current year. And then I think it's like 5, 10, and 10.
Okay.
Is what's proposed for the A&R piece. And then, and then it would be about 20 million each year for 3 years for the regional priority lists.
So is this an outgrowth, this one at the bottom of something Senator Brock raised a few days ago about money is supposed to be targeted to counties, and this is sort of a substitute for that, this regional approach? Or I'm just
I think, yeah, I mean, I understand that difficulty, but I think it's just our approach to economic development, right? Like, we don't cover everything from Montpelier. Like, we are very much in tandem with the Regional Development Corporation so that they know what's going on the ground in their area, and that they would work with the RPCs and their communities, the towns and villages within their communities, to come forward with what rises to the top of being the most feasible project. But for this, they have a gap in funding. So they are best suited to know that. The state could be the good steward to kind of understand what they're proposing and then kind of prioritize like what we think scores the best. But that it is more an acknowledgement that we can't just determine everything from Montpelier. It's really, we have all these locals to actually do that. And we want to make sure it has the community buy-in, and it is something that's been identified either in their regional plan or in this whole prioritization process of a capital improvement plan.
Senator Brock.
This is an area, as you know, Mr. Chairman, I've been trying to get some clarity on for a period of time. Now, I just got a note yesterday from the Secretary of Administration transmitting the actual text of the federal guidance. What the federal guidance says is that where there is not a county government that is active, that the money will be transmitted on a proportionate basis to the communities. Now, I still haven't seen anything other than that federal guidance. And I'm just wondering, I know I've heard talk about things going to the regional development organizations and so on, but it would be really helpful to get some clarity on that.
Can I just say, I'm not sure if Senator Clarkson heard that too, but we're having that conversation in Senate Government Operations about the proportional funding for communities.
Right. And it's unclear because the counties and the towns, it's an unclear situation. And yes, it's still unclear. It's clear as mud. And the counties have real needs.
Money for municipalities or wherever it's phrased in the federal law that's supposed to be proportional. Is that part of the $1 billion, or is that a set aside?
It's a
separate
spot. It is a separate piece. What we are proposing, the only piece of that we're proposing to come out of our ARPA money is the money to VLCT and to the RPCs to help with the technical assistance and to help towns manage these projects and manage this money. But there is still no clarity on the county town piece. And it may be, and Karen Horn is the best person at the moment for us to probably talk with about that, or whoever is in Leahy's office, or, maybe Rebecca Ellis, or, I mean, Joan, is that your understanding too?
Yeah. Yeah. So our understanding is that, yes, the towns and villages are going to get their own kind of distribution. What that is, I don't know right now, but think of that as separate and distinct.
By population, right?
Yeah, by population. There's some sort of pro rata, right? But I think let's separate that out for a moment, because don't think of this regional project as a replacement for that or a duplication of that. Think about it like each town and village is going to get their own pot of money. They're going to decide, do they need to fill revenue gaps? Do they need to do deferred maintenance? Like whatever they need to do. This is more of an economic development initiative that we would want to see projects that need help, right? They want to retrofit a building so that, somebody can go in there, a commercial tenant can go in and hire people and get things going, like really has an economic development benefit, right? That ultimately is going to lead to either grand list increased valuations, it's going to lead to hiring people or retention. So it really is back to kind of the community, economic and community development benefit for those regions. And I think of it more as regional rather than a specific town or a specific business. But we want to incorporate all of it, because heretofore there is no other funding source for that type of a thing.
So are you working on, or will you be getting us suggested language about, some guardrails, like say every region has to at least participate to some degree? Or, I mean, how do we know what the criteria are for allocating $60 million?
And I think that there's rough language that's being formulated about, it says something like a project from each region of the state. I think there's something in there, either it's in the announcement or in the budget bill language that's being formulated. So yeah, I mean, we will have criteria kind of in weighting and, like a checklist to say, let me just bring something up to like jog my memory. Sorry.
I mean, we have this, renewed tension between trying to not micromanage, at the same time trying to put some guardrails out there and the pressure to get the money out the door. But you look at something like all the time and all the language we put around mini TIFs or S101, and then, then $60 million appears in the budget with one sentence behind it. It's frustrating to legislators. So we'll be looking forward to seeing your suggestions in that area.
Yeah, I mean, totally. We could work through that. I think that I guess it's really more a question of, do you conceptually agree that this is a good idea, so that we could then work forward. We'll work with whomever to put that forward.
I personally do. I mean, I haven't really weighed against other options yet, but Senator Brock raised the issue of the Highgate Airport. There's probably several regional airports that could use help. And
absolutely.
And courthouses and sheriffs and there are county needs.
Well, then you're starting to get into the capital bill in some ways.
Well, yeah, but the other thing though is this lack of clarity is really important. Now, what the Secretary of Administration gave me yesterday was from the Federal Funds Information Service, which they use as a guide to determine where money is allocated. And what it says about counties is this: the final 65.1 billion is paid directly to counties, allocated by relative population, with a hold harmless provision for urban counties to ensure they receive as much as they would under the CDBG formula. For counties that are not units of general local government, funds will go to the state, which will distribute them to the local governments in the county based on relative population. That's the guidance that at least that I'm getting from the administration. Now, again, if you're hearing something different, it's
No.
talking about the ERA funds.
ARPA,
Yeah.
No, but I think Senator Brock, I think the difference, unless I'm missing something here, is the commissioner has said she agrees with that interpretation. This money is totally separate and apart from that. This is part of the $1 billion. That you're talking about.
As opposed to the total ARPA distribution.
right.
Correct. This is only the discretionary pot, right? It's not the ones that are assigned to particular areas. So, all of this would have to have an economic development benefit. It's not for sheriffs necessarily, right? That feels to me much more like the municipal pot. This would have to be.
What are those funds called? Does this program or funding source have a name as opposed to ERA?
ARPA.
It's all part of ARPA, which is part of that act, right? That one ginormous act, right? And then of that, there's a little over $1 billion that the governor has put forward the ideas of how we would spend that down over the next about 3 years, right? So that's what this is. This is that $1 billion, separate and distinct from all those other shout outs, I'll call it, whether it's municipalities or there's a separate thing on restaurant stabilization and SBA community navigators. Like there's all sorts of separate set asides. So we table that for a moment and just think about the discretionary pot that every state is going to get. Okay. This is how we want to put it forward. And I think that the spreadsheet and the announcement from the governor's office does a good job of kind of giving the overview. There'll be water, wastewater money. There's a number of different pots that make a lot of sense. Our focus, obviously, is going to be much more on the economic development side. These projects need to fill a need for, maybe it's an acquisition of a building, an improvement, fit up, equipment, machinery. We would take into consideration how ready it is, what the budget is, what the commitment of matching funds are, sustainability, the capacity of the organization. Will it support creation or retention of jobs, or will it attract more talent to Vermont? And also the alignment with the regional priorities, right? So some of these regions already have a comprehensive economic development strategy. Some, if they don't have a strategy, they definitely have a convening of the groups, whether it's RPCs, RDCs, that know precisely which projects they need in their respective regions. So those are the ideas around kind of how we would design this and how we would give credit or more weight one versus another.
It seems to me.
Any timing associated with this from your perspective?
Timing. So I think this big pot, the money that we're talking about for capital investment is a spend of 3 years. That we would break that down 3 years, and that's for whatever would be in the purview of DED. But then there's also A&R. Also, I think has a 3-year trajectory. Remember, this all has to get obligated, I think, by December 2024. Did I answer your question? The timing, yeah. And then the acute need, the 50 million, we're already starting work on how do we execute on that, because of the H315 that appointed the 10 million. So if you agree that there's, more, then we'll at least have that set up. We think that would be started right away. And then the others, we would have to collect the information. I think we envision like a competitive grant round is what we're envisioning, that we would open it up, see what comes in, and then check off boxes to make sure that it fits the definition. So
Joan, I have a question in all this, which is, there's nothing in your economic development for workforce development. And as we've heard with our preceding testimony in the housing section, we need a workforce that can actually carry out all this work. And or just generally, one of the things we've really wanted to invest in more fully is our workforce development programs that would have long-term impact. Did you give any thought? Was there a discussion? Is there a reason it's not included in your economic development package?
Yeah, I think that the idea behind this proposal is that we wanted to fund things that otherwise don't have funding sources, right? Like that, whereas workforce development has significant amounts of money coming in generally through the federal government. Having said that, there is going to be another wave, which I think the president is calling the human infrastructure bill, which is going to be coming on the heels of the next bill, right? That there'll be additional money. There'll also be there are separate funding sources in ARPA for higher ed. It didn't take the point of the priority is to get to things that otherwise would not be funded. Now, your point about workforce is extremely important, and I don't think it's a question of money for programs, unfortunately, right? There are still people afraid to go back to work, or there are people who feel that they don't want to go back to work. I don't know, but that is the most overarching theme that we've heard from just about every employer that's been in touch with us, is just about how they can't get people, and that might hamper our ability to restart. But I think that, and I don't know where is S62, but I think we still need to carry forward our recruitment initiatives.
Yeah.
We still need to do that, and I don't know where that is right now. I mean,
in the last 2 days, Senator Brock and I have heard workforce in the broadband context, all the money that's available for broadband, all the new people who are going to be needing to string lines, all the new housing construction that we just heard about, $290 million or stuff. I mean, yes, some of the things you point to are in terms of people not being available for jobs may be accurate, but somehow these are good paying jobs, and we have to expand our existing workforce, even as it existed prior to COVID, to be available to take all this money and use it. I mean, I'm no expert, but I have this inherent gut feeling that we're not going to have enough people with these skills out there to jumpstart the use of this money. And I don't know how you get them up and trained real quickly, but they're good paying jobs, and they're going to start pretty soon.
This is the thing that is particularly important from what I hear is my phone doesn't stop ringing from employers saying that they can't find people to fill jobs right now, and we haven't started all of these new initiatives. So I share Senator Sorokin's concern that to me is the biggest obstacle that we face in committing these funds and actually doing the projects that we have on the agenda.
And
understood.
I share your concern, Commissioner, about workforce development. I always say I glaze over when I start hearing about it. 64 programs trying to coordinate, and there's a lot of money, but somehow it's not producing the results. And I'm almost not wanting to try and fix that problem at this point. I want to create a new way of getting it done, because it just seems people have been working 10 years trying to fix the workforce development problem, and it's just commissions of 80 people coming together.
No, we're very much committed to workforce development. I think our issue is we have a population issue, as we all know, and we have an aging issue, and we have it's complicated by COVID. That despite the good trajectory on vaccinations, there are folks that still aren't vaccinated, and they're afraid, or they might have children that are still home. These are issues that complicate people getting back to work. And unemployment is still very rich. I have to say that it is a very, very rich benefit, and it's very difficult for someone to justify giving that up, right? So that is a problem. I don't think money is the answer to that problem. I think it could help us in terms of recruitment. And I think that if we have the projects and the contractors bid on the projects and people who want to work, and even if they're located in different states, will go where the projects are. I don't think the workforce development constraint should prevent us from thinking big about the projects that need to happen. Because without that, then we won't attract anybody. We need to build the future so that we could create career ladders for folks. Because if we stay in our very small, very limited capacity, youth will continue to go elsewhere where they see that there is a future, that there are big projects, that there are big plans. And so I think this is a really good attempt to start that. And we'll have to recruit. We have to recruit. And I don't know whether all of this ARPA has slowed up S62. And sorry that I've been otherwise occupied. I don't know where it ended up after it left you all. I guess it's in-house, but I have not been asked to testify on that.
Don't you worry,
I
don't you worry
think-
about S62. We'll take
But I
care
mean,
of
I have to say, we need an effort to go out and advertise about these projects. We would need to make it a big deal. I was just on a call yesterday with a lot of other state economic development commissioners, and they're in the same boat. They're just like, how do we figure this out? There's all this money, there's lack of workforce, we're not alone in that. It doesn't make it any better. It's just, I don't think we should hesitate because of it and let it stop us and paralyze us. I think we have to come up with the plans. And if they're good projects, people will flock to it. We have great general contractors in our state, and they have an ability to attract people into the state, and we could help that along. So sorry, I'm going on my big thing. But any other questions or comments? Anything you want me to
we're
expand on?
gonna probably, I hope you can come back with, we'd like to have the secretary in on Tuesday. We're working
Okay.
on that. We only have an hour and a half on Tuesday, so I think we're going to continue on this whole economic development ARPA theme on Tuesday. Who else
Okay.
besides you and the commissioner do you think from the agency I don't want to take up too much of your time, but is there other people who have any kind of special knowledge base in terms of the proposals coming out of ARPA, or are the two of you sufficient to have a sort of a roundtable discussion?
Yeah, I think I think that's sufficient. I mean, you have Josh, right? You went over the housing proposals?
We spent a good hour and a half with Josh today.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then A&R on the outdoor rec side and the water wastewater, because it all kind of works in conjunction,
Okay. Okay, good. Well, thank
All
you
right.
for the time. Have a good lunch hour, and we'll probably see you on Tuesday.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. We're now over
Go off